Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Varsha Chitnis here and again, and once again I want to really thank Dr. Aparnath for giving me another opportunity to connect with all of you. So the topic that we're going to kind of discuss today, and I say discuss because it will be nice if you can interact and respond to some of the questions I have here. The topic for the day is transform yourself. So when we say transform yourself, transform looks like a little big word, but what comes to your mind? Just in a single word, if some of you could respond, that will be great. You could respond with telling me, what do you think is transform? What is it to transform? Or what do you understand by the word transform? I'm just pausing here, anticipating and hoping that some of you will respond. So do we have any responses yet? Okay, I need some help to see the responses. Yeah, thank you. Have Anuradha, change for good. Okay, that's so. When you say change, yes, transformation is changing and for good. Any others? So as of now, one response. If you have more, we'll look at them. Yes, definitely it is changing for good. Now let's stick to the word change. Yes, for good is a very important part of transformation, and but if you just look purely at the word transform, what it means is to change. It means to revolutionize. You could look at it as remodeling something. You can look at it as converting to something. Another word could be revamping. One more word could be renewing. Then it is also very similar to reinventing. It could mean translating, or in very simple layman terms, it is like a makeover, right? So to transform is to change to something. So when we say transform yourself, what we're talking about, changing or remodeling or reinventing yourself to something that you want to be. Now when I say changing yourself to be what you want to be, this very statement makes it very clear that this is a self-initiated exercise, right? So transforming yourself, and transformation happens. And transformation happens, or it can happen only when you choose to change, only when you choose to transform yourself. So although we say, okay, we say we're working on transforming the organization, or we're looking at transforming a particular group of people, what are we talking about? Nobody else can transform an organization. It is the people in the organization. So it is you who's working, each person in that particular unit or group who chooses to change, and then the transformation happens. So it's a completely self-driven activity. It is definitely an activity which only proactive people can do, right? So it's something that happens by choice. So now that we kind of know what it is to transform, let us look at what are some of the basic things that we would require. So I'm going to make it very clear today. I'm not here to give you any talk on why you should transform yourself and things like that. No, it's a choice, I said. So you will choose what you want to do. But maybe I thought I can use these next 15 minutes to tell you what could be some basic steps that you can take and what you could do to transform yourself. So that's the whole premise of the talk today. So the first thing that you can do is transformation begins by observation. So number one is observe. Observe what? So observe everything in your environment. Okay? So it could be other people, it could be processes, it could be observe the environment, it could be observe and understand how some other organizations are doing something. So once you're in this phase of observation, first observe all around you. That's number one. The second and very, very important step here is observe your own self. So most of us are very good at observing what's happening around. We do it very naturally because all our senses are tuned to the outside world, right? So the eyes, ears, nose, yeah, you can observe everything outside. How about observing inside? A very, very, very important step in transforming yourself is to observe from inside you. So what do you observe within you? A, how do you think? In different situations, how do you think? How do you make your decisions? What are the bases that you use to decide something? How do you take actions? What bothers you? What energizes you? What do you like doing about your job? What part of your job do you not like doing? All of us have things that we enjoy doing and we don't enjoy doing, right? So it's very important to observe this. What kind of situations motivate you? What kind of challenges excite you? In whose company do you feel comfortable? In whose presence do you feel less comfortable, right? So these are some more internal observations that we need to make. Now, how do we go about doing this? This requires a lot of self-commitment. And that's where I said transformation is a choice that you make. And if you're committed to the choice you've made, then yes, it requires a lot of effort, right? So what is a very simple way would be to probably, once you've come out, let's say for a meeting or an event, you come back and probably just re-look at the way you've conducted yourself in the meeting. You could look at the way you've said something or not said something. You could go back to also analyze what was the response of the person when you said a particular thing, and then how did you feel about it. So these are very, very simple steps about self-analysis. Now, I just want to bring out a very important element here. When we do self-analysis sometimes, some of us may have tendencies that we only look at things we want to when we're analyzing ourselves. So let me give you an example. So supposing I'm analyzing myself, and I found at a point that every time I went for a meeting or I went to make a client pitch about or something, I noticed I came back and I did a little bit of post-analysis in terms of what could have I have done, how did I do this, what was the person's response, how was I feeling, okay? Now when I say feeling, please observe some of the physical symptoms that you feel in your body when you speak to people or when you're interacting in a meeting, right? So some people describe, like I used to feel a kind of a tight feeling in my stomach sometimes when I'm negotiating. Now that gave me a lot of, when I looked at this, I said, why am I having this feeling? And I needed to go deeply. I did not get any answers initially. However, it is important to focus on what are the physical symptoms you're feeling. Yes, we mostly look at what I said, what I could have said, and things like that, which is good. But when I say observe yourself from within, please focus on the bodily symptoms. Are you very tense? What happens to your voice? Yeah, things like that. And so it may be a good idea to get feedback from somebody. Let's say somebody is accompanying you for a meeting or something like that. It may be a good idea to tell that person upfront that, you know what, after this meeting, I'd really appreciate if you give me a little feedback, and you could take feedback on these subtle things that we mostly ignore about ourselves. You'll get a lot of inputs. So when I started analyzing and I realized that I used to have this tight feeling in my stomach, I realized that there's something that I'm not comfortable, and therefore this feeling is coming, right? So that was a big insight for me. And then, of course, it was entirely up to me how I went about to, further see what I could do about it. But very important for you to observe yourself completely. So this is one part. The second part, once you've observed yourself, you need to really, really ask yourself, is this a transformational journey, or is what you're doing just a coping mechanism? So there's a difference. When we say a cope, that means cope is to just manage a situation. It is a very temporary thing, right? So for example, let's say there is a conflict or there's a very tricky situation, and I feel in this situation it's better not to say anything right now, let it cool off, and then I'll do something. So that's something which happens at a very logical or a level in our brains, and at that time you may choose not to speak, or you may choose not to interact with people and just stay put. But this is a temporary mechanism. So that is how you manage the situation, or you have coped with the situation. However, what would be transformation is when you come back and analyze and say, okay, in this situation, this is what I did. I did not really, participate in that conflict. And how am I feeling about it? And what would I like to do about it? Right? If you go deep there, and then you start introspecting, and you kind of come up, let's say you start thinking that maybe I should have done this and that. Yes, then it is a choice. Whether do you really want to do that? And if you want to do that the next time, then what is it that you want to do? Right? So it is a little different from coping, managing, and transformation. So I did want to draw these three distinctions. Now, there are some more deeper questions. So when we say transforming, we are saying typically to transform means to go down to your core, to go deep within yourself and connect with your own self. So if I'm sounding a little philosophical, it's not. It's very, very practical what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, many times we have adjusted so much to the present environment that we've probably started behaving completely differently from what we are. Now, I understand that your role may require this. Great. And if you've gotten into that role and you're behaving in a certain way, that's fantastic, that's working for you. But if it is stressing you, if it is bothering you in some way, that, you know what, I do this, but at the end of the day, I don't feel so good about it. Or I'm doing everything right, everything is working fine, but I know I'm getting stressed from within. If this is what is bothering you, then I'm sure if you ask yourself the next couple of questions that I'm going to share with you, you could probably get some answers, right? So the first question you might want to ask yourself is, what is it, yeah, or what is the image I'm trying to create for myself? So who do I want to be, if I have to put it very plainly? So what is the image I'm trying to create? That's the first question for myself, right? So as a manager, let's say you want to come across as a very good mentor, or let's say you want to come across as being the most dependable person in the team, or you want to project an image of being the troubleshooter in the team, whatever it is that you're trying to project, that needs to be clear. Okay, so if you say, okay, I wish to, who do I want to be? And that's the first question. Once you have a clear answer to it, so you may have one or two roles. So let's say, for example, I feel, okay, I want to be the most dependable person in the team, and I want to be the, I want to also be the most, let's say, cooperative person. Okay, so dependable and cooperative. Maybe I come up with these two words. Fine. Having done that, the next question to ask yourself would be, why is it important for you to be dependable or to be the most cooperative person? Yeah. So the first question is, who do I want to be? And the second question is, why is this identity important for you? So at this stage, I'm going to just stop for a few seconds to see if some of you would like to respond. So what you can do is answer the first question in one word. Yeah, who do you want to be? And just right below that, you could write in one word, why is this important for you? Let's see if we have some responses. Do we have something? Yes. Yeah, so there's Jayant who sent me a question. Would it be okay if I answer the question in a while? Yeah, I will take up this question. Yes, thanks Jen for your question. Are there any responses to what I've asked? So who do you want to be? Okay, so what you can do is probably at this point in time, just make a note of this question, write your responses. If someone wants to share here, do share, otherwise we'll move ahead. So once you've answered these two questions in terms of who do I want to be and why is this identity important for me, if you really get a clear answer by yourself, fantastic. But in my experience as an internationally certified coach, and in my experience of having coached almost 40-45 people in the senior and middle levels in the corporates, most of the times all of us struggle with the second question. Why is this identity important for me? Or who do I want to be? Right? This can happen because we've not spent enough time thinking about ourselves. It's not entirely our fault. It's the environment and the speed at which things happen in the business world. We don't really get time to think. But these are questions which are really worthwhile. And here, if you feel you're not getting the answers by yourself to this one question, this may be a good time for you to seek some help in terms of either get a coach or get a mentor or get somebody who's a more neutral person who can ask you many questions around this one question, and somewhere you're bound to get that answer. This is extremely important, because unless we don't have an answer to these questions, no matter how much you move on your journey for transformation, you may not really reach where you want to be. Yeah? So the chances of you succeeding are much higher if you have clear answers to these questions. And most people, I mean, so far in my experience, each person has the answer. of us reach this answer quicker, some of us take longer, doesn't matter. What is important is to get the answers, okay? So once you've asked yourself these two questions, the third question is fairly more simple. The third question we ask ourselves is, how capable am I to create this identity for myself? So for example, if I'm saying I want to be the most dependable person on the team, how capable am I? So I'm kind of doing a very clear analysis of what I can do, what I can do very well, what I can do fairly well, right? What is it that the team keeps coming to me for, right? So what am I really capable of? Now, when you're doing this analysis, there's another side of it which also, along with this, the other side of the coin is what am I not so good at. So as you create a list of what I'm good at, the list of what I'm not good at gets automatically created, right? Now, this is a very, very important stage. Again, here, it all depends on you, how open you are to this analysis. Are you somebody who only focuses on what you're capable and you're very happy about it and you just want to ignore what I can't do? Or are you somebody who only focuses on what I can't do and only keeps working on that? Or are you somebody who looks at both, finds that balance, and then looks at it objectively and says, okay, I have 4 strengths and I have 4 weaknesses. Now, how am I going to leverage my strengths to overcome my weakness? Why? Now, please understand, some of the capabilities we have, which we are born with, some of them we develop, right? It's the same for the weaknesses. So sometimes knowing what is the greatest weakness and if that's the most difficult thing for me to do. For example, if I have to share my example, for me, if you give me a whole chunk of numerical data, I'll be able to do it, but I just don't like it. Yeah, I don't particularly enjoy that piece of work. Very heavy data analytics are going deep into it, and that's not something I particularly enjoy. And because I don't enjoy, I'm not excellent at it. Now, understanding this and accepting this is very important, because the moment this happens, wherever there is an opportunity, even if I have to do my own data, I'll make sure, analysis, I'll make sure I get it validated by somebody who's far better than me in that particular function, in analyzing. Now, that makes a lot of sense, right? Or if you're working in a team, then hey, I'm good at this and I'm not so good at that. So maybe that can be delegated. It can be shared. So this is what I'm talking about, right? But accepting that I'm not good at something, it's not very easy. Some of us are not open to it. I've seen a lot of people struggle. They start off their transformational journeys and they give them up midway when they come to this stage. So again, at this point, if you have somebody who's a more neutral person, a sounding board who can ask you those challenging questions, challenge you, it would make a lot of sense, right? Because when we're doing it ourselves, it's human tendency not to challenge, right? So that's the next question. So how many questions do we have now? We've got 3 questions. Now the 4th question you'll ask yourself is, now what will you do? Right? So now you know who you are, you know why you want to have that identity. Next, you know what you're capable of and not. I think the picture becomes very clear. It's about what is the action you would want to take, right? Once you make a list of your actions, you need to create the environment to be able to implement and take actions. Many of us could get stuck here. We make great action plans and never implement them. Well, here again, you need to be committed. You need to do some physical steps, like set a reminder. So they have to be actual physical actions. Or again, have somebody who's there to prompt you, follow up with you. Yeah, create your own systems and go ahead on your journey of transformation. It is not easy, but it's amazing once you get doing it. So with this, I end my talk, and questions are welcome. Yeah, there was one question which had come up earlier, and I'd like to respond to that first. Can I have that question? Yes, Jayant, your question. Jayant says, hi ma'am, what if after repeated attempts the person is not ready to change or transform, even though the suggestions are made for the betterment of the person? Absolutely, Jayant, this happens all the time. And please understand, why is it that the person is not changing? You're trying your best. You're giving him the right suggestions. The first question for you, to establish with that person is, does he really believe he needs to change? Right? You're making a suggestion. So just as we do in feedback, it's more about, rather than telling the person, ask the person. Right? So you may say something like, I observe that, let's say for example, you can say, I observe that in meetings you're really, really quiet. You're never contributing. You have so much to say. Why don't you contribute? What stops you from contributing? And once you start having that dialogue, you can also further go and tell that person that, would you like to start doing it? Right? So unless he says, yes, I'd like to do it, there is no ownership. He has not accepted the fact. If there is no acceptance, no matter how many suggestions you give, nobody's going to implement, right? So at that point, the person may not believe that he needs to change. So unless the first thing is it's for that realization to dawn. Otherwise, there's no use giving anyone suggestions, right? So that's for you, Jayant. Venki says, I always freeze when I'm asked this question. I believe this is about who am I or who I'm trying to be. Yes, most of us do, Venki. It's okay, it's good to freeze sometimes, and if it takes you to the positive journey, but you don't have to be so perturbed. And keep asking yourself, seek help. Maybe you can get somebody to ask you this question in different ways so that you start thinking about it. Okay, Ashitosh is asking me something. Can you suggest any book that I can read that will help transform myself? Oh, there's so much to read on the internet. One of the most classic books which has been there for ages and which has been there, and that is a book that has helped me develop and transform myself, and that is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's one book that I personally really recommend. If you've read it already, or you could read about the transformational journeys of different people in terms of how to transform yourself. If you can just start off with these simple methods that I've shared with you, these simple questions, I think you should be, you can get started off. Okay. Okay, so that is about the questions so far. Any more questions? Suggest any book. Am I missing some question? Let me see. Okay, I did miss something. Oh, okay, Jayant, again, also wanted to know if transforming yourself can be negative at times. Yes, right? Because so here, yes, it could be. Yeah. Haven't we seen? So when you look at a terrorist, what happens? Yeah, they're trained, they're brainwashed, they're transformed. They were different individuals, they've become something else. And it's a choice, okay, whatever. And that is where I say, yes, it is possible for people to get transformed into something negative. And that is where I would really recommend, if when you ask questions you're feeling very difficult, and if you feel that a lot of negative thoughts are coming, that's the time to seek professional help. he will guide you, he will tell you, because if there are negative thoughts coming, then there is something that you really need to do further. Maybe you need therapy, maybe you need treatment. It could also be that. I'm not suggesting it's always like that, but it could be that. So very important, especially if the thoughts are negative and if you're thinking, the transformation needs to happen in the negative side, then that's a case which really, really needs some